But that was about the level of monitoring that we received in the 70s and 80s. I probably don't have to remind you, but I should remind you that there was no such thing as a concussion. Like, it was just get up and quit being a wussy and then get back in the game. And you'd be like, yeah, but I can't see straight. And they'd be like, whatever. Like, we didn't even have helmets. Like, literally, there was not a thing. Like, none of us had bike helmets. So, the 70s and 80s, reminiscing about how we all survived and made it. But concussion protocol probably would have helped a little bit. It's good to see so many people unmuting their mics or their whatever cameras. That's fantastic. This very handsome cat, or I'm just gonna go, that's a good gender neutral thing. That's a handsome cat. Yeah, everybody, I don't know. So anyway, back to class. So I pushed back the paper. Yeah, woo, hurrah. But don't fool yourself, because I just would have started, instead of, if I pushed it back, I think from Monday to Friday. And so in my mind as a college student, I would have been like, sweet, I'll start that on Thursday now. However, I caution you against doing so. We are looking for a bit more than my 100 level class in terms of writing, technical writing, and whoops, oh, sorry, I never have my phone on. This is my dad, and all right, cool. I'll call him back. So yeah, make sure that you do a good job at it. The GTAs, Elijah and Lawrence, are here for a reason. If you want them to read a page of your paper or something like that, make sure you're on the right track, make sure the citations look good, whatever that is. Use us. We're here. Like I said, there's a virtual writing center with lonely virtual English majors. I don't know. Use them too. They get paid to do that. So reach out to the writing center, reach out to us. And, you know, basically what I'm saying is, if you're going into this 150-point paper and you got some stuff done a little early, then that is a huge benefit for you, because you can bounce it off of other people that are here. Like, we're here for you to check things out, give you some feedback, and then you write the paper. You're gonna do better. So I don't, you know, I say that and I extend that. And oftentimes, you know, people don't reach out. That's fine. You can write a successful paper on your own, I am sure. But just want you to know that we are here. And besides, I want this to be your most kick-ass class. I'll just admit it, all right? I want this time on this computer that could normally be totally boring to be better than anyone else's class, all right? And I'm not smarter than other people on campus. There are some seriously smart people on campus, but they don't have what we have. And as far as our classes, so I want all classes to be entertaining for you and fun. Yeah, I want this to be the best one though. So one of the ways that you can have that be the best experience is to, you know, show us your work and use us as resources and things like that. I'm doubling down on the Chicago gear today. Go Bulls, go Bears, even though last night was, I don't know, embarrassing. Dad joke territory. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad, but whatever. I was hoping that the Bears were going to win because it's my mom's birthday yesterday, but no, I think it's the more appropriate thing is for them to continue to let us down for, you know. So I knew my dad was going to be passed out in Illinois, snoring, maybe by the second quarter already or something like that. All right, any questions about the paper or anything that we have due? There's some discussions coming up. I will encourage you to get involved with those. I still think that my 100 class, I'm not sure. Last time I looked at our food drive, there were no donations from other classes. I know that those links are working, so they're not quite thinking about that yet. So we are in a safe lead right now, and as far as that is concerned. So thanks for the donations that we've gotten. Yesterday I released some information about voting. Bless you, non-denominationally. That's right. When you're good. And so I mean, like, you know, non-denominationally. Like, that's what you get in the social department, right? We're going to be equitable for everything. Plus, I haven't told anybody, bless you, non-denominationally this semester, because I haven't even seen a virtual sneeze yet. Excellent. We've got to cover all of our bases. Any questions about the pacing of the class, jumping in on discussions, the paper, which I think is really your main focus right now? Anything. I'm going to take a sip of iced coffee. That's what happens when I don't drink my coffee from the morning. It dawns on me at about 2 or 3 to just throw some ice in it and roll. No? Anybody? All right. All right. Well, my virtual office is always open. And, well, you know, somewhat anyway. And I'm willing to answer emails or reach out. I've had a couple meetings today, one-on-one with people from my Social 100s about our paper there and discussing some topic ideas. So if there's not any technical stuff, you know that the paper's not due to the 6th. I'm flying out. You know that, like, okay, first of all, when you're gonna fly, I'm gonna fly back home to see my dad next week. When you look at the COVID map and all of Wisconsin and all of northern Illinois is like bright red, that is, I do not want to fly into that. I am not looking forward to that. I do believe it will be the first time I have double masked and wrapped myself in cellophane. And I think I might even have I'll tape little squirters to my hands, little like disinfectants that the TSA can't even take it away from me. I'll just be like, but I'm definitely going to buy enough of that stuff to take a bath next weekend when I go there. But did you like the plane ticket I'm looking at buying is like $17 one way? I know there's going to be fees, and I know really you should actually be paying me to fly into that danger zone. Fly into the danger zone. Ooh, that's right. I'm dropping some old school. What is that movie? What's that Tom Cruise movie? Somebody type it out. Top Gun. Sorry. Anyway, I'm going to fly in there, but wow, this will be the cheapest I have ever flown. And of course, yeah, probably for a reason. But regardless, when you turn in your papers, I'll be on the road. I will be checking my emails. But past, you know, on Thursday, I'm moving, and Friday, I'm really busy. So if you do want some help with the paper, please reach out. From me anyway, please reach out before that. Just because I know I'm going to go help my dad, you know, move a bunch of stuff and get some storage units cleaned out and some other stuff like that too. He said he found 3 Star Wars Hallmark ornaments, Boba Fett ones. I knew my mom was a Star Wars fan, so somehow those were going to make their way to me, but now they're going to make their way to me even sooner because I'm going to go pick them up. So all right, let's jump back in. Let me look over here. Gonna bring up the water piece and top hat. Let me look at these top hat questions real quick. I did start to ask questions about population and finish off some water questions. I opened up those this afternoon. Make sure you answer as many of those as possible. All right. About how long, we'll get to that. About how long is your average shower? Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. And let me head up here. Sorry, everybody. I just got to kind of get these little things going. And I want to share this one. All right. Okay. So I believe the water I buy is sold to me at a fair price. Yes, no, never thought about it. We kind of looked at some of these things. Let's go back here and let me see real quick. I got to stop the screen share. I'm going to look at top hat real quick. Sorry, everybody. And I just want to see. All right. And I did assign these just today. We've got 35 answers. I kind of want to do this one. So let me see here. So what percentage of your income would you be willing to pay for water before protesting or taking action to reduce costs? And you can still chime in on this, that's fine, but I'm going to take a quick sample here, even though I just unlocked it today because we've already got 40, people are answering right now, 40 some answers. This is interesting to me, okay? So I'll ask the question, I'll read the results, and I'll put up the slide for the lecture, and we'll talk about this because I think it's something that's good to chat about as we talk about the value, right, of water. How do we value water or not so much? So what percentage of your income? 0 to 10%, 19 people, 10 to 20%, 18 people, and only a few people that said 20 to 30% of their income before protesting. Only very few, 1 on 30 to 40, 1 on 40 to 50. And I don't even really need to go higher. Most of the people in this class only willing to pay 0 to 20% of their income before protesting or taking action to reduce costs on water. Now, we're not here yet, but much of the world is. So what do you think What do you think about this? What percentage, what did you answer and why? Why only, why are we at 0% to 20%? Most everybody's going to fall into that category. So why did you pick that, or what do you think about that question? Yeah, what do you think? I'll let you go.
So I said between the 10 and 20%, because number one, I currently am unemployed, so I don't have a steady income coming in. So I would.
Oh, I think you froze up. Did we all freeze up? Sorry, Bailey, could you finish that sentence real quick?
Yeah, so I was just saying that I could only use so much money to get water before I go completely bankrupt because I'm not on a steady income. So I
Right.
think like at the same time, you can think about that for other people.
Good. All right. Who else? I thought about that question. Why you chose what you chose, or even a social observation. Because basically everybody in the class is only willing to pay up to 20%.
I chose 10 to 20% because I thought that was that would be more reasonable for what we're expected to pay right now. Like, I wouldn't be willing to pay more right now because other things are so expensive. But if it was like other things like got their prices reduced, but water went up, like I would be okay with that because I think water is really valuable and we should value it more. And if monetary means is how we value things in the society, like by all means, like that's fine. But other things like might need to, decrease in price so I can still have enough money to live.
Right. Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on this one? So if I were to tell you, let me ask this another question. I think there's an answer to a question. The question is, what percentage of your income would you pay to have access to water? Somebody go ahead and lay it on us. I know somebody's got the answer.
I mean, all of it.
Yeah, the ding, 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 right? That's what I'm looking for, exactly, right? So understanding that people in many places don't have water, don't have access to fresh water, don't have an infrastructure which would provide them with safe water. Many people have to walk miles and miles and miles a day just to get water. In a country of privilege, which has infrastructure, which is fantastic. I'm drinking ice, and the ice that's in my coffee right now is not endangering me in any way. But the answer is you would pay everything you have if you don't have any access to water, right? From a privilege perspective, yeah, maybe 10%, maybe 20%. But all of a sudden, if I switch that a little bit and say, yeah, now you don't have access to water, what would you pay? That's pretty much everything, right? Because we know there's got to be something different about this substance. Irreplaceable, completely unique, all life dependent upon it. And yeah, right, one of the first things that they search for, or the first thing that they search for when they're going anywhere else in the galaxy, is the presence of water. Because the presence of water is the presence of life, period. So I think that that's one way. Okay, we look at it this way. And then the other way, what if you just didn't have any? Now all of a sudden, we got probably everybody in here either willing to protest and get that water, right? Which of course presents all sorts of potential problems, and or would pay whatever they have for access to that, because that is not sort of like survival, right? It's exactly survival. Good. All right, let me screen share this again and get back to the lecture. Awesome. I like for us to be thinking in terms of that, right? Because it gives us an idea of not just what we're doing now or where we're at now, but what the rest of the globe or what other cultures look like as well too. So things that we talk about oftentimes in sociology would be that power and access are two very, very important things in sociology, right? What kind of access do you have, and what kind of proportional share of power do you have? So who gets which water and how much depends on a lot of human factors, a lot of social factors. Like that's why we examine environmental sociology. That's why we examine all of this through these lenses, okay? People living in slums pay 5 to 10 more times per liter of water than those living in affluent neighborhoods, even within the same city. The same is true for food, as is true for water. If you're going to get it at a gas station or a small convenience store, that is going to cost a great deal more, and you won't be able to buy it in quite the volume that you could other places. And this is, look, why is water worth it? Well, again, this is that infrastructure piece. And people can say it's not worth it, it costs too much, blah, 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 blah. There's not an argument that you could make about water that wouldn't justify saving it, right? Safe drinking water, good sanitation, and irrigation, having all those things contribute to economic growth. So you're saving money and you're contributing to economic growth. I mean, delivering the goods on water is really important. So spending that money, having that infrastructure is critical, right? To me, each US dollar spent returns somewhere between 3 and 34, or a return between 300 and 3,400%. So when we talk consistently about how to appeal to people who are conservatives or right-wing or left-wing or liberals or whatever that might be, in terms of the environment, there's just not a scenario that we can find that isn't economically viable. And honestly, when you're getting a return between 300 and 3,400%, that's nobody's going to say no to that if they understand that those are the conditions. Mexico City, I've talked about this before briefly, but that's just the notion that some people only get water once every 7 to 10 days. And you're going to leave that tap open, and they've got meters. And so oftentimes when you're not getting water, when it's air coming through that, you've got to keep it open because you don't know if you'll be home. You don't know how long that water will be on for. You've got to fill what you can. And then you've got other people easily in other countries spending 30% of their daily income for bottled water, or the trade-off is spending your entire day walking hours and hours and hours for the nearest freshwater supply. And by freshwater, I mean you can drink it, but I don't mean necessarily that it's safe to drink. I mean, people are walking miles and miles, spending a great deal of their time trying to secure water without a guarantee that that water is even safe. You're going to have to boil it. You're going to have to use some type of pills to be able to clean that water, things like that. All right. So this is a good piece here, and this is about the ability to absorb and absorption for rainwater. Again, if you're gonna build things, whether that's on campus or whether it's in town, that's how important, this is how important here it is to integrate and continue to keep these natural areas, because as you get more extreme weather events and you get more water, you can't have zero absorption, or you put yourself in danger of, like we did years back, a great deal of flooding, right? So you're in a drought and the ground is really hard. You've paved up the Pooter, you've paved up the Big Thompson, you've cut down a lot of trees. Trees can suck up tens of thousands of gallons each tree of water. And now you're left with the scenario where you get a lot of rainfall in a short amount of time, very little of it is able to absorb. So that's where we get increased flooding and those types of events. So forest runoff is only 0.6 and the infiltration 2.4, right? Maximum for what we get. A meadow, same type of thing. A lot of that water. Now, why is it that important as well? Because that's a measure of what's going back into your groundwater, your underground aquifers as well. If it's not penetrating, then you're not being able to save that in an underground aquifer. Cultivated agricultural field, the runoff is 1, the infiltration is still 2.0, not bad. A residential lawn, now we're at 1.6 runoff with 1.4 infiltration. And anywhere where you're talking about a parking lot, a street, a sidewalk, and places where you've taken trees out and things like that, none. So no infiltration there, right? And this is a piece about maintaining the ability to have safe runoff, the ability to even more so have a maximum amount of infiltration so that water can be used again. Again, the water cycle in this country, in this continent, does not favor us. So there's more and more and more reasons that we have to try to find ways, particularly here, to be able to save that water, right? Or preserve that water, or make sure that our underground aquifers aren't just pumping 24 hours a day, which when we talk about water rights, oftentimes they are. All right. So bottled water, North America has two of the largest water markets between the United States and Mexico, 29%, which would be 29% of the world's packaged water market. China's consumption, 15.6 growth in just 5 years, doubling it every 4.5 years. So look at our consumption, you know, an annual growth rate. I mean, that's important to look at too, our annual consumption here in the United States in 2008. So this is, you know, these numbers are quite low. Annual growth rate of 6.7, that's big. 8.3, that's pretty big. 15.6 means you're needing a lot of water, right? And you're needing to find a lot of water. Consumption for folks here, and then an annual growth rate in other countries as well. So who are our top 10 global consumers of bottled water? And of course, there's a lot of reasons for this. Coke is in Mexico, as we know. They package that, and it's oftentimes cheaper for people in Mexico to drink Coke than it is to buy their bottled water, even though there's obviously hardly any production that goes into that, in as far as it's basically the same product without the caramel color, without the Coke, or without the, sugar, or whatever that might be. So, you know, water is getting more scarce. Certainly bottled water is far more expensive. We already know that. Much of that comes from tap water. And of course, that's a low estimate. And even if you're going to get it in some of these areas, some areas it's just straight out of the tap. Hopefully you're getting it through a reverse osmosis machine, something that can take out some lead and some other things. But most of the brands had fertilizer, bacteria, Tylenol, industrial chemicals, you name it. And like that bottled water, like that bullshit the Penn and Teller thing was talking about, the little mini film we watched, there's almost nobody, less than one person really, to patrol that. So it's left up to the states. And of course, look, when we leave things for industries to self-regulate, we have seen it time and time and time again. It's a poor model. It leads to certain people making a ton of money. It leads to the quality and safety of things tanking, and privatization of the water industry is happening as well right now. We've privatized food and the chicken industry and so many things. They say that that's free market, but that's not what's really going on when we're doing that. So like that is true, of course, we can also shop our ways to safety, right? You know, we could buy organic food, bottled water, home air purifiers. So a lot of times, all that we're coming up with are these consumer-based solutions, but they aren't getting to the big picture of, wait a second, we know that millions of gallons of fresh water are evaporating and melting into the ocean right now. What can we do about that before we have to get the next technology? Because once all the ice caps are done, and we've lost that water into the oceans, forget about ocean levels rising. We need to have a solution for how to purify salt water. And desalinization is not that way. It works on a very technical level. It's very dirty. It's very non-cost effective, very energy, like the energy consumption for it is very, very high as well. Ooh, I can't think of anyone more evil than Mr. Burns. So I always love this picture. But here's that privatizing, right? And again, those two things that I talked about, power and access. You know, and this brings us to that term neoliberalism, which is a theory of political economic practices, sure, right? So neoliberalism, this would be a good test question. Neoliberalism proposed that human beings, their well-being could be advanced by liberating individual entrepreneurial freedoms and skills within an institutional framework characterized by strong private property rights, free markets, and free trade. Trade isn't free, markets aren't free, corporations aren't people. And as Citizens United has already shown us, we have seen a tremendous erosion in human rights and the value of human life and rights by trying to define corporations as people, or suggesting that a market would want to take care of people the same way that it takes care of its profit lines. That doesn't happen. So this idea elevates free enterprise above everything else, oftentimes bulldozes sacred individual liberties, and, you know, that attempt to hollow out the state by privatizing really any and everything: chicken industry, safety recalls, poisoning, gas, energy industries, you name it. And this is, again, all is contributed by that gap that we see growing with SES, and SES would be socioeconomic status. So, you know, fewer and fewer very, very wealthy, while more and more people find themselves unable to survive. That's what we get when we try and do these strong private property rights and quote free market and free trade. And then oftentimes that leads to, you know, massive safety recalls because people haven't been putting the time and effort and energy into the safety steps that they need. I mean, if you're really still going to find all of that in bottled water and you don't have hardly anybody to look at that, that's an important function that the government serves. And I know big government, but the reality is when you take away those scientific positions, when you take away a lot of that ability to have the infrastructure, because right, chapter after chapter, what is it that's saving us? Infrastructure. What is it that gets your house instead of in a tenement or just that buildup, right, around cities? So you have a street that's wide enough for a fire truck to get to your house. Infrastructure that enables you to open up the water and have water that's purified and you can drink it. Infrastructure, right? And so, you know, this isn't a pro-government piece here. This is just, there's a lot of services that are being provided that privatization can harm when we do that. So I have here kind of a little bit of an obvious question. Would you trust an industry? Because I set it up already, right? More or less that self-regulates, but that's something for us to really think about. Would you trust a food system or industry that self-regulates? Okay, and why or why not? You know, and that doesn't mean that every corporation is bad. It also oftentimes means like if you roll up to Greeley, you can't take a picture of those CAFOs, they could sue you for that. Well, that's the very definition of non-transparency. And so I think that most of us trust industry or trust a business less when they're less transparent. Most people trust the government less when they're less transparent. That's sort of the checks and balances and safety and things that come along with that notion. All right. Now we kind of get to this market environmentalism, another really great term for the exam. And it's the same idea or similar idea, right? Emphasizing markets as a solution to environmental problems. And you know, it's packaging that neoliberalism that I just talked about, sort of in green wrapping, right? Again, that push to strengthen private property rights. And we're not just talking about private property, but we're talking specifically here about private property rights to bodies of water that have been owned by the government or local municipalities, whether we're talking about here or places in Germany, and then somehow relying on the markets to allocate those resources, right? And saying that our environmental goods would be used more efficiently, but that's not how it's working out. We know that water privatization is leading to degradation of water quality, is leading to us defining water unlike or like other commodities, even though we know that it is unlike any other commodity. And of course, that's pushed by the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. By privatizing it, they're trying to say water's like everything else. But of course, then on top of that, you're leaving access and sanitation to market mechanisms. But again, you're asking non-human entities that are based around profit. And so that's the thing. We know that. I'm not arguing that. We know what corporations are out for, but they would certainly be much more out for profit than they are for maintaining sanitations and safety and access or human rights or social justice issues like we're talking about, right? So Waterworld, I've got not just a bad movie anymore. I've never actually seen Waterworld, but I heard it was awful, awful, awful. And I do actually love bad movies, so maybe sometime. And I've got this Quiznos down here as that example just of green wrapping. And that's not only a metaphor. I think several years ago it was Sun Chips that switched their packaging to biodegradable packaging. Does anybody, I see people shaking their heads, does anybody know why they stopped that? Because they had it and then they quit. They stopped making it. Does anybody know the reason? It's a really sociologically interesting reason. Hey, Julie. Anybody? Oh, here, let me check the chat real quick. All right, don't see anything yet on that. Well, because there were complaints that the bags were too noisy. So like decided to work on it, made a better product, right? Saw a couple face palms right there. Made a better product, biodegradable, and then, you know, doesn't make it to market for very long because I guess it crinkles too much, but you know. So that's why we study the environment in terms of sociology as well, right? Because those are barriers. Those are legitimate barriers for human beings, you know? future of two water worlds. And really, we are breaking it down here. You know, affluent nations, those that can afford to pay, and the rest of the world, right? And affluent nations, they're more publicly funded, not necessarily as much for corporations, but that does not mean that there's not been a huge push. There has been a huge push by Nestle and other companies to buy public sources of water. And if you get a new regime in, or a new whatever, a new mayor, and gosh, in place, I'm trying to think where in Germany this was. I think it's in that Blue Gold documentary, but you have a new administration, they decide to sell off their water, and you've had that water in that town or that area's had that for generations, and now it's gone, right? So affluent nations have more market advantages, more subsidies. And again, now the rest of the world, if you're not an affluent nation, then of course, you don't have a choice if they're going to privatize your water. And these firms are seeking like full cost recovery. So they're going to set up a desalination plant in the middle of super impoverished India in a way that, and ask you to have access cards and or pay for it, but nobody's using these things. You know, people are still walking to a poison water source or to some water source that is in the middle of nowhere because they simply don't have the money for it. So it's not smart capitalism. It's not really smart business in the first place, because these countries, look, they're unable to borrow from the World Bank or the IMF because of these policies. And then, hey, we're going to refuse that loan. We're not going to give you that loan for that. And so it thrives under these threats from those same entities, you know. And again, that doesn't happen in as affluent of countries, but you've got to be able to pay, because these profit-seeking firms, they do expand to populations that can't pay, but they can't pay, right? So it's not a good business model. I mean, the water conditions are already horrible. They offer to save those people from the water conditions, but then the people can't afford their product. So then they try and make the country pay. They go bankrupt. They try and recoup, and then these plants are no longer processing for people, right? There's been many more successful attempts to go in and just build wells in area and get people self-sufficient by far than any of these attempts from these water firms. And of course, they're changing contracts, they're changing definitions. Yes, they're failing because they're not bringing a product to people in a way that makes sense. It's counterintuitive, right? Certainly the price discrepancy I have here between the rich and poor countries is unacceptable. All right. So water and agriculture, not necessarily determined by its water situation. And so we know that, look, right now the United States has we have millions of acres in Africa where we're growing food with scarce water, and then exporting the food that we grow there from places that are more than food insecure. A great deal of the population there doesn't know where its next meal is coming from, and we're taking that food and shipping it back here. So we also find ways, and it's not just, right, they lack water, but also sufficient arable land for cultivation. So land is a huge factor that's limiting agriculture. And especially when we look, I guess, at exporting and importing, but particularly from areas you know, where folks are starving, to be able to do that and then take it right out of the country and ship it. And of course, you're looking at a huge carbon footprint for that as you're shipping thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. All right, I'm going to pause the screen share for now, head back here. I will be posting the Chapter 5 PowerPoint on Canvas. Yep, I will. And I'll go post that PowerPoint today, and I'll undo that module for everybody, or I'll show that module. Anything else? Any other questions? I'll wrap up Chapter 5 on water on Thursday, and then we'll start getting into the chapter on population. Okay, so here's a heads up. Exam 3 is going to be over chapters 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so this one will have 3 chapters, and the last test will have 2. But to get to the chapters that I want to, we're going to have to look at all 3 of those this time. So we'll be leaving chapter 5 on Thursday. We'll be getting into population. I think that's the next one. Is it population? Yeah. And then I think the one after that is transportation, which is really interesting as well. All right. Any questions before we're done for the day? And I'll take a sip of my coffee. Anybody? All right. Good to go then. Great to see everybody. Happy to see your smiling faces. Go out, take advantage of the snizzo for shizzle. And be good people and do good things and take care. And I'll see everybody on Thursday. If you have a question about the paper or anything else, reach out. That's why we're here. All right. Take care, everybody. Peace. Be well. I'll post this as well because I've been recording.